Hi, everyone. Today, me and Tete are going to be doing a quick podcast about why Tete has decided to get rid of yet another character, this time Zindel.
Yes, we are officially getting rid of Zindel. Goodbye to you, Zindel. Au revoir. Arrivederci. Auf Wiedersehen. Uh, Goodbye. And I'm getting rid of him because, to succinctly put it, what I was attempting to do was trying to take another creator's original character and create it as my own. And that is a grave violation of creative integrity, and that's probably why it didn't work. My biggest apologies out there to the Siegel and Schuster family for doing such a very dumb thing. I know DC has screwed both everybody over the past 70 plus years, but I almost went on the same path and I almost became the monster I became. It's a bit of a Beowulf thing. You become the monster you keep fighting.
So, what prompted you to do this?
What prompted me to do it? Well, for a very long time, I have always loved the original incarnation of Clark Kent. I've always enjoyed his character. I've always enjoyed Golden Age and a few other versions that have done pretty well by sticking to the original concept. But most people don't know about the original concept. Most people don't know about the original character or enjoy the original vibrant personality. And people are just very eager to jump on the bandwagon of, oh, it's a stupid character or it's a lame character because all they see is like silver, bronze, new 52, rebirth, you name it. And of course, even the fantastic crap Storm of Snyderverse now we have to add to this. Um, and I felt very sad. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a good character. This is you know it's an enjoyable character. It's a good, and I wanted people to appreciate the character. And I thought, what if I try to revamp and reinvent Golden Age? What if I try to show more of why he's doing what he's doing, like what led to his past, like what is his past motivating him forward, and why he's doing things. And I guess also too as sort of an sort of an open, explicit way to tribute to what he was meant to be originally in terms of ethnic and political ideas, and show that and explore that, um, and the significance of what that meant. And I thought, well, I was very ambitious. I thought, well, I'm going to do research and I'm going to do this very well. I'm going to really flesh it out. But then when it came down to it, I got distracted by the aesthetic. I did not do my research very well. And I constructed a very substandard, shoddy, crazy train wreck. And was it my own laziness? I don't know. I don't know if it was laziness or just getting lost in the aesthetic and thinking too much on it, or maybe it was the original creator's curse protecting me from potentially touching and corrupting him, just like DC's done all these years. Um, Maybe it's all of that.
That makes sense. So, I guess it was driven by, your your interest in thinking about the golden age and proving a point, right? Also that, Clark isn't just his bronze age incarnation.
Exactly. It was I guess it was a love for the character, and the love turned into it turned into a hard-nosed, unyielding motivation to prove a point. And when you're trying to do something to prove a point, you lose all integrity. And therefore, when you lose the integrity, you get distracted by details, and then you get distracted by distractions itself. And then you end up doing a very badly poor job. It's like you have all the trappings, but you don't have the heart, because you yourself are not the original creator. You're not going to understand the heart of the character. Well, you will understand, but you can't convey it. It's one thing to understand, it's another to convey.
Exactly. And you were doing it in a different format. You were trying to make it like, Philip Roth or Don DeLillo, but with superpowers. But the original format was pulp, like this short very simple comic. It wasn't these long streams of consciousness.
Exactly. And I realized, as you and I had gone back and forth discussing this, it really can't be done that way. I mean, it could, but not such a lengthy stream of consciousness. You can't make it into an epic novel because it just doesn't work. It works beautifully the way it does, short, sweet, simple pulp. Um, and I failed to see that. In my own hubris, like Icarus's father constructing the labyrinth, I I didn't finish the labyrinth. I built a couple walls and said, "Okay, here you go," and it was shoddy walls at that, and we had nothing except maybe 30 pages of disjointed narrative and a really bloated romance scene that made no sense.
Tell me more about the writing process for the bloated outline.
A horrible, horrible time. The worst time in my life. Such a perpetual headache. I hated every night doing it. Um, I thought, oh, this will be great. Oh man, look, it looks so cool. Like, oh, it's so emotional, and um, it just turned out really bad. I hated it, and it got to a bloated 10,000 word thing, and I guess I was excited because I was like, oh yay, Batman now. He's called the Bat, and he's like a mysterious shadow figure, and um, it was a horrible process that I never want to go through again. It's I would rather have dental work, removing cavities done, than do that again.
What prompted you to keep on writing that even though you hated it?
I think it was me trying to prove a point and me thinking if I worked hard enough, I could get Zindel to work. But then I eventually came to the realization I can't. Zindel's not my own. Zindel and the original form of Clark Kent and what he was meant to represent under that alias and under what he does, he he belongs to his original creators. He belongs to Siegel and Schuster, and that's what I have to respect. Obviously, DC's never really respected that all these 70 past years, but that's neither here nor there. Um, but I realized I couldn't do that, and I couldn't do it as a full length epic novel. Could there have been some interesting things explored about a theoretical rise of fascism in America, in Depression era America, and a man's journey to try to stop it. Maybe that could have been really fascinating, and the implications of its social and ethnic um, politics that would have involved itself, and what that means as a character and identity of self and everything. But that's very hard to do, and I think it was done very well with the original character and the original creators. And as much as I wanted to pay tribute to that, I I failed because I was doing it to prove a point, and it was a product of my own hubris, and I regret doing that. And again, apologies to both respective families out there. Never got an apology from DC, but you're getting one from me.
Right, that makes sense. Right. So I think it was just all about the point proving. And how was the romance scene? You talked about a romance scene that doesn't really make sense.
So the romance scene, I was pretty ambitious with this. I wanted to take certain stories and scenes from certain comics from Golden Age, and of course the Fleischer animated series. The Fleischer theatrical serials, and I wanted to really flesh it out. And there was one scene that involved a magnetic telescope bringing down a comet, and I thought, well, this is going to tie in very well because as we created with Zindel's origin story, he got hit by a comet, or within proximity of a comet, and he got radiated. So this is why he has powers. So I thought this could have really emotional, significant impact about facing something, confronting something that is the summation of one's terror. And I just shoehorned in a really ridiculous romance. Like, oh, they went through such a traumatic thing. Now they realize they love one another. and now they're going to share a passionate kiss and wit and banter like a bad 90s movie.
Yeah, because I did notice the banter, and that kind of interested me because you always said you hated banter and all this shorthand for romance, but you were doing it.
That's true. I guess when I meant banter that felt shoehorned in. I like banter between a couple, but it has to come from their own character, not just for the sake of the movie or plot, you
Do you
know.
think what you were doing for Zindel was just kind of there for the plot? Because I didn't really feel like it was coming from their personalities.
I think it was. And that's why it read like a bad 90s script.
I know. Yeah, I was dissatisfied with it, especially since you were not focusing on any other aspects of the character. You just had to jump straight to the romance.
I know, I felt very bad about that. And I guess it was because I realized I was tackling a very big issue. And a lot of times with something very big, it requires time, patience, research, and a humility to understand the context, times, and respect the culture and society as well as the people and their choices within the context of whatever's happening. And this is a prime example of what I experienced with Andre in 70 Fierce Years. 70 Fierce Years is pretty much a product of, I would say, almost several years in the making of a lot of patient research, listening to Andre, more research, and of course, respecting the cultural, social, political, all aspects of whatever's going on with the people and the people themselves. But with Zindel, I was in such a hurry to prove a point. I did not give a crap. I rushed through gathering little bits and pieces of information and tidbits and trying to cram aesthetic and oh, I'll find a style and a voice, and then just making a very shoddy robot that doesn't function.
Yeah, unfortunately. And that's why and also his personality kept on changing, didn't it?
Yeah, every time he took the personality test or I took it for him, it would come back with different results.
And he eventually became a ripoff of Andre, didn't he?
He did eventually, and like a very watered down, ridiculous version of Andre. And even the character Liza became a ripoff of Tamara.
Yeah, you made her a sex worker. You were saying you got a revelation about it. I was like, "Oh no." Because every time you say you get a revelation, you suddenly go on this spiel about it and you become really convinced, but then 2 weeks afterwards you say, "Oh no," and you
I
trash
know,
it.
I know. I'm like, I never want to think about Revelation again. It's like just let the characters do what they need to do. Um, but yes, it all just it all fell apart, and it was my own hubris. It was the fact that I stole, not stole, but I was taking another person's creation, trying to work it as my own, and maybe the curse came to bit me on the back, and it certainly did because it fell apart. It exploded like a toaster thrown into a blender.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, you never really accomplished anything with it, and, you didn't have a solid idea of what it was, every week, something about Zindel or his story would change.
There was no consistency. It was a nightmare to work on, and I think what, word of caution to people out there: even if you love something and it inspires you, don't try to make it your own. You cannot. You should not. You, as a creator, need to delve into yourself and learn to listen to characters that are their own people. And you can still love these things and these characters and derive inspiration or find similarities or parallels with your own characters. But let it be a word of caution to people who want to retain their creative integrity: do not try to make other people's characters your own. It will not work. Does not. And you owe it to yourself as a creator to listen to your own characters as their own people and not try to prove a point. I mean, well, unless you're trying to make a work that does prove a point, but then that becomes a whole other animal that I myself really don't want to go into because I don't want to write that. And as we've seen, I've done a very, very poor job of executing that.
Hmm. Would you say how was the process of getting rid of Zindel versus getting rid of Kai?
Kai was a painful process. I loved Kai, but I hated what he it wasn't what he became. It's what I threw on him. I tried to make him a romantic hero. I tried to make him a death god. I tried to make him a 19th century person with existential crisis. That said, Kai has always had existential crisis, but it's always been in more of a primal old D Norse way. Um, but Kai, truth be told, despite my proclaimed ecstasy of getting rid of him, I wasn't happy. I felt sad killing him off. I enjoyed Kai. Kai is a subtle, cold person, but at the same time, he is sharp, full of wit and insight. He hates bullcrap. Um, so getting rid of Kai was painful, and I was very saddened to do it because I felt I failed him. And honestly, I I think he felt very hurt that I failed him like that, especially when, I had done so well with Andre. Why could I have not done this with Kai? Because with Kai, unfortunately, um, I let my own desires take over and try to mold it into different things that I wanted to see. And another case in point to all you creators out there, even if you want to see something, do not let that dictate to your characters. Please treat your characters like real people. Respect their agency and sense of self. Do not try to shoehorn any elements or anything in just because you want to see it. Don't do it. For the love
Mhm.
of creativity, don't do it. Getting rid of Zindel, I'm happy. I feel at peace. It's like burning a cursed object. And again, apologies to the family out there, to the families out there. Um, like I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jerry and Joe. I didn't mean to do it. I only did it out of my own darn pride and, wanting to prove that you guys had a good character. So sorry to you guys up there in comic afterlife.
I know, right? So I think another issue was that Zindel never had a solid personality, but Kai did. Kai, despite him being put into situations maybe where he shouldn't have been put, such as the fantasy in the 19th century and the romance, he did have a core personality. It just wasn't allowed to develop fully, right? Because you were putting all these things onto him.
Exactly. I was putting so many things onto him. He wasn't allowed to really fully be himself, and he got very angry and frustrated with me. And
Mhm.
it's like he refused to budge. It's like, for example, I threw romance on him, and he's like, I'm not a romantic person. I don't want romance. And yet I kept forcing it. And this just made him more resentful. And he really hated me. I think he was ready to, I don't know, go after me like a berserker with an axe if left alone.
I always wondered why you were so fixated on forcing romance on him. I was like, maybe his story would be better if it didn't have romance, but you were insistent on the romance.
I think it was because it was my own selfish, juvenile desires. And, this is a problem I also see with a lot of creators who create works that are maybe, story structure wise, they're good. But when it comes to characterization, it sucks because, and this is where we get a lot of boring tropes and things that fall flat because too many creators allow their desires to take over their creative integrity. And I have learned a long, long, hard lesson from doing that. Don't let your desires take over your writing. Always respect the characters and let them do their own thing, which is what I let Andre do. I just let Andre run in like wild. I just let him ride his horse to
Hmm.
step, and lo and behold, Andre delivered.
And that's why he's the best character you have.
He definitely is. He is his own man. Andre is his own man. He does his own thing.
Exactly. So yeah, Zindel, goodbye. And one last thing before we go, the other characters were pretty good, ironically.
Ironically, they were. Lightsa, before we did the whole rip off of Tamara, was good. Um, who else was good? Jimmy was good. Dr. Luther was good. Um, Rosalia was good. And now I have decided to transfer adoption to you for Lightsa and Rosalia, respectively and collectively.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. I mean, I you were tempted to delete them. I was like, "No, I don't want you to delete them." And now, they are in my care, so we will be seeing more of them in the RPs, Sims, and possibly in the actual comics, of Sam New York and the Book of Joel. They may make some minor appearances.
Yay! I'm so happy. I'm happy that poor Rosalia got adopted into a fantastic family, and Lightsa has a happy, fulfilling life doing her social justice groove. You go, Lightsa, baby girl.
Yeah, she can just hang out with Lev, and no, no romance, not
No
with him.
romance. No, no. We have that circle with a slash across it. No more romance. No, only Andre's allowed romance, but that's because he worked hard for it.
Right, and another thing I hated about Zindel was how you said he hated his physique, and, you were saying that he hated the fact that he was taller and more muscular than everyone else. I'm like, that is such a cop out, and you made him a romantic interest. So I'm like, okay, he does not have to put in any efforts to be attractive to the woman. He just is because he was so lucky enough to be hit by the asteroid, and he claims to hate his physique. But come on, it's not like he became morbidly obese or something after getting hit by the asteroid.
That's true. He no, he didn't. I mean, look, if anybody gets lucky and gets these superpowers in physique, they're going to enjoy it like Shazam. Shazam loves it.
Exactly. I don't understand why you were saying, "No, he hates it." I was like, "That's so forced." Like, you were just trying to blind yourself to the fact that he is a stew.
I was, and I was like, oh, angst, oh, my powers alienate me. That's
I
what
hated that. Like, that came out of nowhere. It just felt Snyderverse also.
it did feel Snyderversey, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. He's just angstily looking at the camera and he has this constipated look on his face. And then he exchanges this quote unquote meaningful look with Lights Up, but it's just like the day after tomorrow. How meaningful is it?
It's not meaningful at all. It's rubbish. Oh, the curse came to visit me. I'm sorry, guys. Man, Jerry, calm down.
Yeah, so we'll be deleting him from The Sims tonight.
We are. Goodbye, Zindel. I regret ever creating you. You're a horrific robot, a real Frankenstein's creature of hubris, and sayonara, Zindel.
Right. And remember you were asking, I wonder why Joel doesn't like him, because in The Sims, every time Joel talked to him, he was pretty angry.
That's true. Joel wasn't even angry at Kai when they talked. He was a little scared, but honestly, Kai wasn't that bad to Joel. He was actually a good guy to him.
He was. I think he was just frustrated all the other characters like Finola.
Finola, oh my god, so many bad characters.
And
Finola.
Eula, and they were all flat. They were just there to say, "Oh, look at how interesting Kai is. He has all these people around him."
When really Kai by himself was just fascinating. Like just let him go be a, you know, scary, dark, subtle Norseman in the woods.
I think Middle Ages suits him better. And we're going to talk about this more with Helleborn, I think. She has a lot of insight on this, but I thought the 19th century wasn't that great for him, even though it was better than fantasy. Fantasy was the worst because it was so convoluted.
I think 19th century had some good points, but a lot of it's just it really limits him because Kai he needs to be he can't be hampered by a lot of conventions. He needs to have different conventions, so he just needs to go in full Northman mode.
Exactly. Yeah, I think and also the more simple it is, the better. The problem with the fantasy was that it was so convoluted.
It was convoluted. So much rubbish, and
The thing about him
Um,
being a slave, and then he gets turned into a mercenary, and then he dies, and then he comes across the first Frost Lord, and then he takes over for him, and now he's no longer immortal. And then he meets Gerda, and it just becomes like too many events, kind of like we talked about in a previous podcast about Kingdom Come. When too many things happen, you just don't care anymore.
exactly, you don't. Simplicity is wonderful, people. Creators out there, keep it simple. Try to sum it up in one sentence. Andres is Cossack officer loses everything, tries to find new life with a new identity in Soviet Union. Um, Kai's going to have a new story, and he will have a new name because Kai is a hipster name from late 19th century Danish
Right.
people and hipster.
Ironically, Zindel could be summarized into one sentence, but he still sucked.
No, no, it's more like man gets his hit by asteroid, attempts to take down fascism in America, and then you have three other sentences.
What are those? Romance?
Romance, being a very poor ripoff of an already brilliant creation and having no spine.
And one last thing, I think one other thing I hated about the romance was what I was talking about with a lot of Lois and Clark incarnations. It was just there because you couldn't find another way to give him a voice, right? You were just like, we have to put in romance so we can finally see how his dialogue is like.
Yes, that was so bad. Oh,
So when people are like, well, we have to resort to romance now because otherwise we don't know his personality, that there's a problem.
that is a red flag. If your characters need romance to understand who they are, that is a red flag because romance does not make the person makes the romance, as we've seen with Andre and
Exactly.
Tamara.
So that was why I was like, why are you starting with the romance? I think this is why he was going to be dying soon. And now we have announced his death.
This is the death knell. Dong, dong.
Exactly.
Yes. So we are going to kill him off. Bye, Sindel. Auf Wiedersehen.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.